From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we talk about the 71 different lake captains that lived in Bayview in the age of sail and steam between 1878 and 1968. This episode, like all the others, is sponsored by the historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. Now today, I'm a couple blocks west of Humboldt Park on Montana Street in front of the former home of Captain Leonard Caswell. Now he only lived here for 1 year, 1898, and he had several Bayview residences while a captain. And the dilemma I face when putting together these episodes is which house do I film in front of? Because there's quite a few of them. Remember, there's 118 different homes in Bayview that Bayview Lake Captains lived in, but there's only 71 of them. So you do the math and you realize that, and I will tell you, almost, I think all but one lived in more than one house. So when I'm filming these things, I have to decide, okay, which house do I want to choose? And to the best I can, I choose the house that had the most significant event happen to them. Their most favored thing happened to them. Something of great importance in their lives happened while they lived in that house, and of those I try to select the one that was the most significant. So that's why I'm here instead of not the others. Okay. Now, Leonard Caswell was a tugboat captain in Milwaukee Harbor, and usually, well, I won't say usually, sometimes, maybe often, when people hear the word tugboat, when they're not familiar with things maritime, perfectly okay. The tendency is to think the harbor. And I just said the tugboat was in the harbor in Milwaukee Harbor. People tend to think when they hear tugboat that it's strictly a harbor operation. It doesn't go out into the lake, moves big ships around the harbor, but they do more than that, and I would say that the opposite can be said to be true. And what happened to Leonard Caswell in this house proves that the opposite is true. In 1898, when he lived here, Captain Caswell was captain of a tugboat, and he witnessed a schooner that was sinking. The life-saving service was trying to get out to help it. Couldn't get through the waves. That's how big the waves were, because the life-saving service had their own boats and they'd row out. Couldn't get through it. So Leonard Caswell sees trouble without being asked. Remember, there were no radios in those days. He just sees it and says, let's go. And he and his crew went out into Lake Michigan, into the teeth of the storm, because the schooner was a ways out. And they effected the rescue. They helped the life-saving service effect the rescue. I don't want to see any more than that, because Simon's got the whole thing coming up. I do think I'm going to try to put together a special episode just on that rescue, because for those of you that may have seen an earlier episode, I talk about the definition of a hero, and I use William Brager, a fisherman, lake captain fisherman, as the example, because he married the widow of a fellow fisherman that had drowned and took on her 2 daughters as his own. I think that's terribly heroic. Well, here's an example of heroism on the high seas, Lake Michigan, which, by the way, sailors that have captains that have been out on the oceans have said they've never seen anything worse in terms of sea conditions than Lake Michigan in the winter. So But this was an example of pure heroism on the part of Leonard Caswell. Nobody asked him to go. There were no light signals. Nobody coming along the dock, hey, go help those guys. He just saw it and he went ahead and did it on his own. He didn't have to. Put himself and his tugboat and his crew at risk going out into that weather. Never thought twice about it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a hero. He had nothing to gain from it. Okay, so I'll cut it off at that. Simon Stanhope is coming up. He's going to give you the nitty-gritty on all of that and more about Leonard Caswell, who later became the local president of the Milwaukee branch of the National Tugboat Captains, Tugboat Sailors Association. So, pretty cool guy. And he lived here in Bayview. That's all for now. I will say hats off to our Bayview Lake captains. Enjoy the narration that's coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain Leonard F. Caswell, who was born in Wisconsin. A tugboat captain, he was also president of the Milwaukee branch of the National Tugmen's Association. During his 5 years living in Bayview, he had 2 amazing and heroic sailing adventures, which we will detail shortly. He died young, however, just 43, and left behind a wife and 5 children. Captain Leonard F. Caswell was born in Wisconsin in October 1867. His father was born in Ireland. His mother, Harriet, was born in Canada, or possibly England. Their date of immigration unknown. Like many families of the time, Harriet, born in 1832, had 4 children, but 2 died young. Leonard Caswell first appears in Milwaukee in 1892 as the licensed pilot of a steam vessel, name unknown. He was also documented as a licensed steam vessel pilot for 1898 and 1907. Then, in Milwaukee, in 1893, he married wife Anna on 25th April. His address at this time is unknown, but he may have been living in Walker's Point, since he is shown there just 2 years later, in 1895, and also 1896, working as a captain, ship or ships unknown. A year later, in 1897, Captain Caswell moved to Bayview, his address unknown. The next year, 1898, he is shown living at 1006 East Montana Street, working as a tug captain of the Milwaukee-based tugboat W.H. Simpson. The year after that, in 1899, he moved to and began renting the house at 601 East Ocean Street, staying there through 1900. Of interest, he is listed as both a tug captain and a lake captain for 1899 to 1900. Tug name or names unknown. One of many such examples that tugboat captains were and saw themselves as lake captains, though they didn't captain larger ships. His whereabouts are unknown for the next 2 years, 1901 and 2, though it is probable he was living in Bayview during this time, since in 1903 he reappears, still a tug captain, name unknown, and living at 2412 South Woodward Street. Of note is that in 1901 he was president of the Milwaukee branch of the National Tugmen's Association. His whereabouts are unknown for 1904 and 5. In sum, he lived in 3 different houses while he lived in Bayview for 5 years, 1898 to 1903. He worked as a tugboat captain while in all three. While the sailing adventures of all of Bayview's lake captains are detailed both on our website under the menu item Sailing Adventures, as well as in the accompanying book to this series of the same name, Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, sometimes discussing those adventures here is also warranted. The next story about the heroics of Captain Leonard Caswell falls into this category, and took place while he was living in Bayview at 1006 East Montana Street. During a huge storm on 25th October 1898, the schooner Barbarian was foundering off of North Point in Milwaukee Bay. The U.S. life-saving station in Milwaukee saw the ship in trouble and launched its small boat to try to get out to the Barbarian to get the crew off before it went under. However, the seas were so rough and the waves were so high and the wind was blowing so hard that the life-saving boat couldn't make it out through the waves. Seeing the trouble the life-savers were having, and without being asked to help, Captain Caswell quickly got his tugboat, the W.H. Simpson, away from the pier and under way to sail out past the breakwater and into the teeth of the storm to help. Upon reaching the life-saving boat, Captain Caswell ordered his crew to throw the life-savers a line, which was received and then tied to their small boat. Caswell then towed them out through the waves that they had been unable to get through and out to the sinking Barbarian. Captain Caswell successfully brought the small boat alongside the schooner, and the all-Chicago-based crew jumped into the little lifeboat as it was tossed around like a toy in the surf and waves. Once everyone was aboard the life-saving station's small boat, Captain Caswell's W.H. Simpson took it in tow again, bringing it successfully ashore in Milwaukee, with all of the schooner's crew saved. Nobody had asked Leonard Caswell for help. He merely saw what was happening and went into action on his own. A real hero. Just 3 months earlier, on 3rd August 1898, Captain Caswell, aboard the W.H. Simpson, had towed the scow Dan Hayes, nearly capsized, and in danger of sinking off Fox Point during a gale, to safety in the port of Milwaukee. The crew of the Hayes had abandoned it in the ship's yawl, and made it successfully to shore, though just barely in the huge waves. The towing of the Hayes from Fox Point to the port of Milwaukee during the storm was coordinated by the Milwaukee branch of the U.S. Life-Saving Service. Captain Leonard Caswell's heroics, risking his own life to save the lives of others, speaks to the quality of lake captains that once lived in Bayview. His story is but one of many among Bayview's 71 different lake captains. Their homes were small, but their courage was huge. In 1906, Captain Caswell is recorded as having left Bayview, moving to the northwest side of Milwaukee on Providence Avenue, still a lake captain, through 1909. Then, on 24th February 1910, he died. Location and cause of death unknown. He was just 43 years old. He and wife Anna had 5 children, 2 sons, Archie and Robert, and 3 daughters, Marie, Gertrude, and Josephine. His mother, Harriet, is also found living with them in 1900. Leonard and Anna were very much involved in Bayview cinch card game parties. During 1897, they hosted one in their Bayview home, exact address unknown, in honour of Anna's mother, and participated in at least 2 others. Cinch card games in Bayview were reported frequently in the Milwaukee newspapers during the late 1800s, early 1900s, and appear to have been quite the rage at the time. Many Bayview lake captains and their wives either hosted or participated in these. We will have a separate episode about the Bayview lake captains and their wives that are documented to have participated in these cinch card games in Bayview. After Leonard died in 1910, life became very difficult for wife Anna and the 5 children he left behind. She and the children moved to and started renting either a house or an apartment on Marshall Street right after his death. Then, by 1920, she moved the family to Farwell Avenue, working as a, quote, sales lady, retail grocery, unquote, and taking on 4 outside lodgers to help pay the rent. In 1930, Anna, now aged 60, moved to Los Angeles, California, and moved in with her now married youngest child and daughter, Josephine, with Anna taking a job working in a furniture store. 10 years later, in 1940, Anna, now working in a restaurant at age 69, moved in with now widowed daughter Gertrude and her 5 children, still in Los Angeles, but now just 2 doors down from Josephine. Anna Caswell never remarried. Her burial location is unknown, though oldest son Archie appears to have joined his mother in California, since he was buried in Los Angeles in 1967. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Captain Leonard F. Caswell, as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now by individual volumes on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website under the Contribute button, as well as in the end credits at the conclusion of this video. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview Lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 lake captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with the instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. It's free, fun, and available any time you're out walking. Just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.